Melanated family, back in the building. Melanated Convo Podcast. I'm happy to be back for another week. This is Thursday, family. I got my sister Sonia Williams Lewis in the building. We're going to get this thing in. This is our news show where we talk about different topics going on in the community around the country and we add our insight to it. I'm happy to have Sonia Williams Lewis with me. This is the sister who is the creator and founder of Ascribe Educational Consultant, where she give insight and information to businesses and organizations who realize that maybe they haven't been too kind to Black people. You know what I mean? Just to say it mildly, they haven't been too
Right.
kind to us. So she step in and say, "Hey, here's your blind spot. This is how you do it." So this is my sister, man, and she's been in the Sacramento area for a while, putting it down with Black Lives Matter and other
Yeah.
organizations. But boots to the ground is
Yeah.
the mission, and both of us are trying to accomplish that. So I'm happy to be back for another week with my sister. Like, subscribe, do everything you can. We gonna blow up.
Yes.
You need to be on the
Get on the
ride with me,
bandwagon
family.
now.
What I'm doing,
Right.
I'm not gonna stop. And someday your partner gonna tell you, your friend gonna tell you. Why don't you tell them? Jump on early. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All right. So we having
Absolutely.
fun. But on today's show, a couple topics we're gonna discuss. My sister Sonia was involved in the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors are having a meeting regarding a jail expansion
Yeah.
here in the Sacramento area where I'm from. We're going to talk about Deion Sanders. We're going to talk about some things going on in Missouri with college students. We're going to talk about Dusty Baker being a Black man who's rooted in where he's from and doing what's right, but also reaching the highest plateau of baseball. You know what I mean? So we're
Yeah.
going to talk about all
Yeah.
these things today. And I got to say this brother's name correctly, Serrano Stingley. We're going to touch on
Yeah.
this briefly because this is a brother from Sacramento who had an altercation with the police where he was dealing with a mental health issue. While dealing with that issue, he came into contact with the police. He ends up on life support. So we're going to break that down just a little bit and just so show love to his family and
Yeah.
support because we don't like seeing these things happen, right? So first things first, Sonia, talk to me about this because what I didn't say to y'all is there was a Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. I'm going to doctor up a nice little video of Sonia's portion, right? Because the community had the opportunity to speak out for or
Yeah.
against expanding the jail facility here in Sacramento, which to my understanding, Sonia, it comes from a lawsuit, Mays versus County of Sacramento, where
Correct.
Lorenzo Mays, who was incarcerated, basically sued the city saying, "Hey,
Yes.
the conditions here aren't up to par," which we know to be true for the most part. So
Correct.
Sister Sonia spoke out. Sonia, talk to me about that
Yeah.
experience and a little bit about what's going on with that. You know what I mean?
So there's some history to that. The Mays versus Sac County lawsuit has been in effect for several years. And when I was a chapter lead with Black Lives Matter, we have come up against that board several times and said, "Hey, first, can we fix the things that are mentioned in this lawsuit? Because people with mental health challenges and disabilities, are their rights are being violated every day at 651 I Street, the downtown jail." And so lawyers came in, there was an evaluation of the facility, and when it was all said and done, the county was left liable. You have to do some things to make sure that people's care is humane while they're in these facilities. Now, nowhere in that lawsuit does it say that a new jail needs to take place in order to meet these regulations. It just says that you need to have a better intake system. You need to have an area for people who have been diagnosed with mental health issues so that they can have a cell by themselves. We've already reduced, because of COVID, we've reduced the population in our local jails as well as in RCCC out in Elk Grove. So Black Lives Matter, Decarcerate Sacramento, which I'm also a part of, led this mission against this is the third time in the last 4 years or so, Harrison, that the
Mm,
community has come to the board and said, "No, we don't want this expansion." Here's
mm,
the thing that is just the kicker to me. You're proposing let's go back a little bit. Scott Jones, in our last attempt to stop this jail expansion, Scott Jones, who was the sheriff 2 years ago, He said, my sheriffs are not equipped to handle mental health crises. And so, if we are not qualified to handle mental health crises, we want that completely taken off our plate. So people in community were like, yeah, we've identified 3 other organizations, community-based organizations, people who are trained in mental health crises that don't show up with a badge and guns to help people manage through mental health crises. And I'll tell you this, like, I have fought in these streets 10 toes down for cases like Joseph Mann, who was experiencing mental health crises when Sac PD shot him in the middle of the street and literally decapitated his legs. His family won a lawsuit. I have fought with the Michael McIntyre family, who was also shot on Highway 50 by Sacramento sheriffs. There are so many folks who have been killed at the hands of Sac PD and Sac Sheriff. So I say that Serrano Stingley, and that's today present, but up to this point, there have been so many cases, including individuals like Mays inside the jail who's experiencing the trauma that goes along with. So not only did we have over 1,600 signatures on a document saying that we want to stop this, we had over 200 people either call in or show up and give testimony. And I guess am considered one of the heavy hitters in town. So when they call me out to speak, I don't need to come to every board meeting or every city council meeting. It's when those big things are being voted on that they feel like my voice might add some credence. And so 2 things stuck out. On the date of that board meeting last week, the new elect, and he's been elected sheriff before, Jim Cooper, gave this assessment and basically dog whistled the community who was fighting against the jail system and saying, do you want to listen to these people who are not the experts, or do you want to let criminals back into the streets? And that's the narrative that they were trying to shape. And so for me personally, I'm looking at, this is a man who, when he has a badge and a gun on his belt, he is the terrorist in community. I have firsthand experience of that. So I shared at the podium, at the dais for those elected officials who were there ready to vote. I said, when I was 18 years old, Sheriff Jones pointed a gun to my head and told me he was going to blow my brains out if I didn't lay on the ground, knowing that I was not guilty of a drive-by shooting. He knew that I wasn't. The car that they were looking for was a brown on brown Cutlass Supreme, and I was driving a white on white Delta 88 Oldsmobile. Just so happened I lived in the neighborhood, and you want to pull over every black body that you can because you know you can, right? But I believe with the full fiber from the top of my head to the sole of my feet, if he didn't get the call on the walkie-talkie that they had their eyes on the actual vehicle that they were looking for, my sister and I might have been dead that day. And I wouldn't be here to tell that story. The second thing that resonated with me, and the biggest problem with that initiative for the jail expansion, is that they are willing to spend $450 million minimum, upwards of $1.8 billion of Sacramento County taxpayer dollars to expand this facility that the sheriff has already said we are not qualified to handle mental health. And the crux of it, the reason that they're trying to get it passed through is because they're saying a part of the building is going to go for inmates who are experiencing mental health. But we know from that lawsuit, you don't have to expand the jail, retrofit the jail, or build a new jail in order to take care of all of the things that need to be taken care of in that lawsuit. So that's what last week's board meeting was. We were there till midnight. We wanted to hear what these board members had to say. We wanted to make sure that they heard every bit of testimony from the public. And it took till midnight, calls coming in and people who spoke at that podium. So it was very powerful. At the end of the day, the next morning, they voted. It was 3-2 for an expansion. And they're going to readdress what the dollar amounts look like. But we're talking millions to billions of dollars.
That's damn. That I was so happy to see you fighting for that, because first thing I was thinking, it's like, okay, a new mental health facility, and then it hit me, or what they're calling it, and then it hit me, okay, this is just trying to satisfy two things. So yeah, you may want to help, but you want to get a little money in the process.
Absolutely.
Just listening to the people in the community and doing the work in the doing the work in the community, doing the work in the city that you're in. But Sonia, it seems like these officials, when it comes to county jail and prison system, this industrial system that we're looking at, it doesn't really fare with Black folks. So it don't look
No.
like their main goal is to eradicate the treatment, because the guy who sued him, that's like a no-brainer. Of course.
Right.
I had
Right.
to spend a small time in Sacramento County Jail, and this is
hmm
the most inhumane environment I've been in by far, not even fit for a dog. But I'm happy
It's not.
that you being on that podium and seeing you speak truth to power, sister. Jim Cooper, like, how I feel about police today,
Yeah.
it's shaped by history and a lot of things.
Yes.
But my
Yes.
first interaction with not liking a police officer was this man. When he
Yeah.
came into my brother's home, he treated my
Yeah.
brothers like animals. He looked at a picture of
Yeah.
my dead father and
Yeah.
said, "Who's this clown?" I
Yeah.
just remembered his face and his name for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. And I remember the interactions that the people in my community would have with him was very harsh.
Yeah.
Very harsh, because I can understand someone trying to stop crime. Like,
Yes.
I don't want this environment to be crime ridden, but you
Right.
have to understand all of the circumstances that caused it to be this kind of
Absolutely.
environment. So the love, and I know I'm not gonna say what I know on air, but I know shit about Jim Cooper. I know his family
Right.
and people around him, and I'm
Right.
like, you gotta stop the cooning, my brother.
Right. Right.
People
Right.
around you is like,
Yeah.
I don't fuck with none of that. What he doing?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Because
so let's also add to this conversation just a little bit of data and statistics. In Sacramento County, there's the Black population is only 11%. According to the census, we know that sometimes all Black folks don't fill out the census, so 11+%, right? No more than 13%. There's always a margin of 2% error. In the Sacramento County facilities, 43% are Black people who are there. Now, take that a step further. 78% of people who are held because they can't afford bail and they have not been found guilty of a crime. So again, it goes along the line of people commit crimes because of poverty. We can't bail ourselves out so that we can go to work and keep our housing, keep our cars and all that kind of stuff because you hold me in a cage, right? Now, of that 78%, I want to say that it's like 60% of people who are also incarcerated there have a mental health crisis. So you're dealing with someone who can't afford to bail out and a person who might be experiencing mental health issues. So here's what we do know. When you make more jail cells, you are saying, because the prison industrial complex is a for-profit system, I am anticipating filling all of those jail cells. So you're going to make laws like when 1865 came along. And remember, I like to always tie it back to history, because anything that's to do with law enforcement, that's slave patrol, really and truly, if you tell the truth about it, right?
Yep.
So in 1865, when the slaves were freed, they came up with new laws to make sure that these people who were now vagrants or poor or unhoused, like listen to the terminology, the same things that we're experiencing today. You make new laws to make sure that you can put them back in a cell and control them, and then turn around and have in a state constitution, even the state of California, which is supposed to be the bluest progressive state in this country, right? But has very red politics along the line of they just, voted and said, we're not going to strike out slavery out of our state constitution. And so put all those pieces together. Black population, 11%, but 40+% in the jails. People who cannot afford to bail out, 78%, right? And 60% are people experiencing mental health crisis. And on top of that, the Sacramento Sheriff's Department are not equipped, trained, and they don't want to handle mental health crises. So why are you putting mental health patients in a jail? That's not a facility.
Yeah, because just real quick, I had a small stint in Sacramento County Jail. I'm transparent about my situation. I didn't do a crime or nothing. It was on some bullshit or whatever. But by being there, I knew I'm going to be out. I'm not a criminal, but I'm observing the environment, the food, the treatment. And most of the people that was around me in different cells were there for mental health reasons. They were very feeble. They were a little out of their mind. They were not criminals. So I'm just looking
Right.
around, Sonia, like, damn, I feel bad for this environment. But we need to continue to spread the word and talk about all of these things, because until we do that, the criminal justice system is going to remain as it is. And we need to be
Yeah.
honest, Black and brown people are attacked by this system. It's financial.
Yes.
Like you just mentioned, not being able to bail out is a financial move. So I can be
Absolutely.
free if I had money. That speaks to us housing more prisoners than
Yeah.
anywhere on the globe. You know what I
Right.
mean? So this
Yeah.
is a problem.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact that you spoke truth to power about how the attitude from police officers,
Yeah.
because somebody can go home and be whoever they want to be. We're just talking about how you're treating humans. This
Yes.
is what it comes down to. And to me,
Yes.
a cop, a teacher, firefighter, anyone who comes in contact with the public in a sensitive manner, this is a delicate job.
Yes.
Actually, remove job. This is a
Yes.
delicate way of life you've chosen, because it's not a
Yeah.
job. So your bad day, I know you had a bad day, possibly. I know you're a cop dealing with people who've pulled their gun out on you, or you thought they were okay people and they
Right.
turned out to be whatever. You got
Right.
to go get some help for that, because you can't take that out
Absolutely.
on the next person. You don't work at Walmart. You can't just
No.
overcharge them or be kind of rude to them. Your job involves you pulling out a gun and possibly ending somebody's life. So
Yeah.
salute to you, sister, for being there, and hopefully they listen,
Yeah.
because I read somewhere that the county jail was like at 80% capacity or something like that.
Right. It's not even full right now,
Mm.
neither downtown nor our Triple C. And we have fought through COVID. COVID was one of the reasons that we proved to them, like, you can let people who have low level charges against them fight their cases from the outside.
There you go.
And I will say that there is positive news coming from the state front, in the sense that our governor, is Newsom, is signing into law two things. Kind of like, money is going to be allocated for people once they are released, so that they're just not released and they have no resources. But also, from a state and federal level, there have been lots of conversations about laws being put on the books to eliminate cash bail. And so we know that when people have the opportunity to, people don't just run. So during COVID, when they had to get those numbers down, they were forced to let people out because of COVID, right? People didn't just run and say, I'm going to dodge court today. They came and they held their responsibilities. And so we really and truly have to look at the humanity of all of this. I'm going to stand on my statement that I make in regards to crime. Crime is subjective, and law enforcement does not stop crime. Police just don't, 90% of the time, they don't just roll up on a robbery in progress, right? They don't just roll up on a murder in progress.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that facetiously, like it's funny. They don't roll up on a drug deal. So they come to the scene afterwards. So they're not solving crime. They're not preventers of crime.
They're not
What's
preventers
going
of
to
crime.
prevent crime is every county around this country allocating dollars to schools, allocating dollars to employment, allocating dollars to mental health, allocating dollars to housing. When people, that's safety for people. What's unsafe for people is when you don't have adequate, safe schools. What's unhealthy and unsafe for people is when you don't have resources to get medical care, especially mental health medical care. What's unhealthy for people is when they don't have a roof over their head and they can't put food in their bodies. That's what's unhealthy. That's where the crime is. And the crime lies at the hand of the people who could control the purse. And I ain't got the purse. You don't got the purse. But our state government does. We are the fourth largest economy in the world.
That's important to note. That's important to know. And I want to make sure, just to segue real quick, because everything my sister Sonia is saying is important. I wanted to get her input on that because her boots are to the ground, man. So she was there. You see, being in the building, feeling the energy, all these things are important. I want to send a quick shout out to the brother Serrano Stingley, and prayers to his family. This is a brother in Sacramento who basically had an altercation with cops last Tuesday. Based on his daughter's testimony and what his daughter has said, he has been suffering mental health issues at the time. She has known him to be going through these type of things. So last Tuesday, the cops are called. Someone says he tried to steal a Cadillac converter or get in their home, something of this magnitude. But we understand the brother was suffering from a mental health episode, as they say. at the time, there's a camera that basically shows him running out of the yard or the front of someone's house, Sonia, and his hands are up. His hands are
Yeah.
up. They bring him to the ground. The brother is reluctant to succumb to what they're trying to do to him for whatever reason. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But ultimately, he's on life support. He's on life support currently. They say he had meth in his system, cocaine, all these different drugs, right? But I think I bring this up. It's perfect based on everything you were just saying, Sonia,
Absolutely.
because this is another case of a mental health situation, not
Yeah.
a serious crime
Right.
being committed.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, how do we handle? Because his hands, he was not fighting like that. His
Yeah.
hands were up. Hey, you got me. But they're trying so hard to get him to the ground. Sonia, I have a question for you. Like, in your
Yeah.
opinion, if we have a mental health issue like this, where there's no gun, there's
Hmm.
no threat of violence from the individual, what do we think a cop should do? I'm thinking, let him go. If he wants to run or something, let him run. If you're trying
Right.
to accost him and you can't, taser, any moves you learn, none of this shit is
Yeah.
working.
Yeah.
Let him run. You don't put him in a situation where he on life support, right?
Right, right. No, I 100% agree. I think that we've gotten so desensitized to, and unfortunately unwilling to address the intersection of drug addiction and mental health crises. And let me just add in there poverty. I'm always going to add poverty to the mix of it, right? So if a person is dealing with poverty, and we already know that the most marginalized people in community suffer with issues of trying to survive in this country when they are having experiences. So let's just say the Black community, because you and I both agree that, when things happen to Black folks, they happen 10 times worse compared to other communities, right? So if and let's go put in there a layer of mental health professionals and psychologists and counselors and things. Dr. Joy DeGrew's work on post-traumatic slave syndrome is extremely important in the line of every Black person in this country historically from the time of slavery. So that means generations, and it builds on generation after generation. We're carrying the trauma of our ancestors. If we are experiencing post traumatic slave syndrome, very similar to post traumatic stress syndrome, that when trauma happens, we're carrying and we don't know how to deal with, mitigate, how to stop that thing, it causes us to act erratic. It causes us to seek possible medication with alcohol, with drugs.
Mhm.
It causes us to not be ourselves. And so when I think about a person of this man's caliber who has a history, right? A documented history. And typically, people who are experiencing mental health crises, right, have some kind of documented history. And so I agree that an individual who doesn't have a gun, doesn't have a weapon, they are not a physical threat to anyone else or even themselves. We have to. I tell people all the time, don't call the police. They are the worst thing you can call in a situation like that, because a person who's experiencing mental health crisis, they're going to see that person with a badge and a gun and a uniform as ah, and
Yeah,
so that
that's
might have been what the case was. His hands were up and he wasn't fighting, but because of the trauma that's going on in his body, it was like defense mechanism, cradle up. Let
that's
me protect
exactly.
myself from
Mhm.
the unknown. And that's what we don't want. So I always shout out MH First, which is Mental Health First. It's an or nonprofit organization here in town. One of my homegirls in community, Asantawa Boykins, who is also a nurse at UC Davis, who was also one of the founders of APTP, the Anti-Police Terror Project, came up with Mental Health First is because she knows that when people show up in street clothes who are trained professionals who can address someone and say, okay, how can we help you in this situation be safe?
Mhm. Mhm.
People are more likely to listen and come with and negotiate with that person rather than do that with an officer in a uniform.
Damn, Sonia, it's so funny you say that because when he came out the door, and he's seeing cops, and we know the aura of a police officer, the lights, the damn
Right.
uniform. To a lot of people in our community, it's jarring. So that's what he did. He's seen the cops, and he was in shock for a minute, then
Right.
came out with his hands up. If he would have seen an individual with just regular clothes on,
Right.
trying to talk to him, the whole narrative of that situation could have been changed, because I
Changed.
see they're trying to shape the narrative as he was on drugs, he's black, he was already shiftless. Fuck that, man. This brother was going through something prior. And when we talk about
Right.
like even the school system, a lot of our young men were put on like HDH medicine or all these
Right.
medicines for being disabled, quote unquote, or having this issue. And what I do understand is you give these medicines to kids who are struggling with different things, and you don't want to deal with it. And then when they become adults, they're now seeking drugs as well. So when I seen all the
Absolutely.
drugs they say is in his system, combined
Right.
with mental health problems, who knows how long he's been dealing with that, just being
Absolutely.
black, because like you spoke about, it's just added on because of our damn skin color. It was handled incorrectly, and we're
Absolutely.
always putting money in resources and energy towards things I think are asinine to a degree.
Yeah.
People in impoverished communities, people who don't have money, end up having a lot of other problems, America.
Yes.
It don't matter. Look, I'm a mobile notary by trade. That's like what I do during the daytime to make my money.
Right.
You know what I mean? I go to a lot of people's houses. All kinds of people, nice people,
Mm-hmm.
but black hoods. There's white people who live in versions of black hoods,
Right.
everybody.
Right.
It's just not criminalized. The
Right.
police ain't always over there. They're not getting
No.
a hard time because they're poor. Maybe in
Right.
certain instances, but we got to realize that a lot of the time this is a poor people thing, a black people thing. And looking at these politics or these politicians deliberate over simple things. That's why I try to talk to whoever I can about, okay, give me some of the backstory. Because the
Right.
shit the shit looks
It don't
very
never
cut and
add up.
dry. It never adds up. So I appreciate you being there, sister. Talking about
Yeah.
Serrano Stingley.
Yeah.
Prayers to his family. Hopefully they figure that out.
Absolutely.
Do whatever they can. I think maybe they may do a civil lawsuit. I don't know. But in that
I'm sure a
situation,
lawsuit is coming. I'm
and
very
why not?
positive that
Make them pay,
absolutely.
because that shouldn't have happened to that brother. So
Absolutely.
moving along real quick. What I
Yeah.
want to discuss with my sister, Deion Sanders, our brother, dominant athlete,
Yeah.
football player, baseball player, one of the most polarizing athletes that we've seen in our history, from a visual stance, from a
Mhm.
business stance. Deion did a lot of great things in his career. So he took a job
Yes.
at Jackson State. He re-energized that program.
Mhm.
His cachet was able to get a lot of great recruits to that school. They
Yeah.
was almost able to turn it around based on his expertise, his experience. Who the hell can argue with Deion, right? This guy is proven, and he's motivating, he's inspiring, he's charismatic. Like, he got all them tools, and he
Right.
proved it on the field. You see, so he decided after 3 years to go to Colorado from Jackson State. Now, Sonia, like I always ask you, when you seen that the brother Deion was going to
Yeah.
PWI, that's one way you can say it. He's going to a bigger
Yeah.
school, more dollars to spend, more opportunity to get bigger recruits. When you seen he left Jackson State, what were some of the first things going through your mind?
I had mixed feelings. I mean, you know that
Mm,
I'm a HBCU
you
group,
are.
like nut. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, no, no. We need to get more of our babies over there so that more dollars can come into the HBCU system.
Yes.
Like, that is a reality. But as a business person, I'm not mad at Deion. Like, Deion Sanders has a proven record of success, not on the field but behind the scenes. And so there's credence to what he can offer to any program, right? So
Mm,
that's not up for debate. I think that I'm very critical of people who are automatically critical of black folks getting their coins, and they just do. Like, let's evaluate why you don't want to see another black person get to a level of what's deemed success. We don't know what he might be able to do in Colorado. until we give him the opportunity to do that. And
Yep.
so I am all for the Deion Sanders mission and vision going to Colorado in a bigger stage and a bigger platform, because one, you don't have enough Black coaches doing this job anyway. So I don't care if you at a HBCU or a PWI. Let's talk about historically from the NFL perspective. Tell me about the Black coaches that are the head Black coaches of any NFL team. They are so few and far between. I mean, I can think about I can't remember his name, but I can see his face. The Pittsburgh Steelers coach, right? Long
Yes.
time Black man,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I can't call his name.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it.
But
Damn.
you
Yeah.
know who I'm,
You're
y'all
right.
know who I'm talking
Yes,
about out
you're
there.
right.
If
You're
you're
right.
an NFL nut, you know who I'm talking about.
He's been there for a
So,
while.
a long time. And so, with that being said, we don't know if this could potentially be a launch pad, another launch pad for Deion to get a head coaching position in the NFL, which I think personally he would be amazing at. When I compare the NFL, the politics of the NFL compared to the politics of the NBA is run by the players. The NFL is run by the coaches. So you
There
can
we
see
go.
where that interest is. I think if we begin to shift the narrative and the way that we allow leadership to play out in the NFL, the power structure might shift to the players. And
Mhm.
that's what they're afraid of. And so that's why you don't gotta, this is my opinion. I'm just
Well
one
put.
little chick from Oakland, from the hood. I'm just one little chick who watches things from a organic organizational standpoint. And the NFL, because it is highly rooted in like a Columbine that is reminiscent of a slave auction, right?
Mhm.
Let's be truthful. Let's be
Yes.
honest.
Yes.
The majority of its players are Black. And so you don't care what happens to them when they get injured on the field. A lot of players don't, go away from their careers being rich for the rest of their lives. They got to figure out something else to do after they retire. I
Mhm.
mean, there are things that I think Deion Sanders being in the position at Colorado will lead to more positive segues and positions opening for other Black coaches, not just at PWIs, but also within the NFL.
Well put, sister. And I'm learning how to check my revolutionary spirit because it goes against everything sometimes.
Right?
Anytime you leave us, anytime you do something else, I'm
Yeah.
like, what you doing, Deion? Right? But I'm like,
Right.
wait a minute. First, did the brother ever promise that he's gonna
Right.
stay here? And I seen an interview on 60 Minutes, I think it was, where they asked him if other colleges come knocking, what would you do? He said, I would be a fool not to entertain it,
Not to
which he's right.
consider it.
So, Black folks, we gotta realize this is what we don't want to talk about, Sonia. Why was y'all so enamored about Jackson State? What? Because all of a sudden we talking about Deion, we talking about Jackson State. Listen, the cachet of celebrities, how we feel about Black people who've been really successful, we
Right.
have to realize sometimes that shit will control your
Absolutely.
feelings towards something because it was an emotional connection. Because everything I said at first about him, how well he did at his job, this is a fact. All of a
Right.
sudden, we tuning into Jackson State. The
Yeah.
kids who he's recruiting because of his cachet is saying, "Okay, I'll come with you." So this is
Right.
a thing about celebrity, and because something I
Absolutely.
realized, Sonia, real quick, there are other ex-professional athletes that coach HBCUs,
Yes.
basketball and
Yes.
football, guys who
Yes.
were good at their job when they played
Yes.
professional sports, right? But their schools and the attention didn't come like it did for Deion. So
Right.
let's just use the template. And I see people say, well, hey, Jackson State should have cashed in on the opportunity,
Yeah.
spend more money, go seek more money, go do all these things. Possibly, but
Right.
maybe they didn't have the infrastructure for a Deion.
Right.
When has there been a Deion at a Jackson State type institution?
Right. Right.
They didn't
And we
have
have
the
to explore
infrastructure
that. Right.
to just throw
Absolutely.
money into said promotion or whatever. They was learning on the job, but they can use it as a template. And
Absolutely.
going to Colorado, he's bringing talent, all Black, by the way, the talent he's bringing there with him. And the team is 70% Black.
Mhm.
Coaches in NCAA, like you said, it's 5 of them.
Right. Right.
I just make jokes. Shit, I'm sorry. It's like 7 of them maybe, but it's out of like
Right.
400
But
schools.
it's
It's
not a
like
lot. Right.
it's not a lot of them at all. So he can make an impact there as well. We
Absolutely.
need to remove the emotion. He's not a coon or a
Right.
sellout or
No.
any of these things. He's a businessman, and we
Absolutely.
live in America. And he hasn't spoken bad of Black society. He
No.
represents us well, to my
Yes.
in my opinion. You know what I mean? So give the brother a shot. But we broken, Sonia.
Yeah.
We broken by all of these different things we've had to go through. So sometimes the smallest thing.
It's the littlest thing. We get so used to and comfortable with us. And I get it, like Black excellence is a thing, but Black excellence is also, in my opinion, an oxymoron. Like, because everything Black is excellent. So it's
Mhm,
like you say in a double entendre. I don't need you to tell me that Black is excellent. I don't need you
mhm,
to overemphasize that I can be brilliant. I know that, right?
mhm.
You've just made the word Black and everything associated with all the connotations negative. And so that's where it comes from. I mean, I told you I have mixed emotions because
Yes.
yeah, it's like, oh, this feels so good and it looks so good.
Mhm.
But I know I have confidence that a person like Deion Sanders has done the vetting for someone to be his successor. And any smart business person like myself, you have an exit strategy. Like you come
Yes.
to the realization that I can't do this forever.
Mhm,
I would tell you, Harrison, at some point, this, machine that you are building is going to blow up. What is your exit strategy? Right?
mm.
That's just good business sense.
Yep.
And so I'm not mad from a business perspective of Dion going to the next level. It it 100% paves a pathway for other Black coaches to come behind him, and I just know that there are going to be some more that come behind him.
Yes, and he did name a successor. I've been
Mhm.
following videos his son Deion
Good.
Sanders Jr. put out, and it's
Uh-huh.
chronicling. It's given the chronological order of how everything played out. And Deion is a
Yeah.
class act. He named a successor, which I don't know this gentleman, but it seems to me, Sonia, it was one of the coaches that was on the staff already
Right.
that Deion possibly groomed or gave information to. And what people don't realize too, even him being at Colorado, he still got a line to Jackson State. So given the
Right.
coach's information, possible recruits, he can still be an ally to your university.
Absolutely.
And black people listening to my voice, all of us who are on the ground, working class Black folks, if you look at that and you say, I don't like what Deion did, cool. When your 6'3", 230-pound son get recruited by everybody in the country, send him to Jackson State.
There
Put your
you
money
go.
where your mouth is. Send their ass
There
to
you
Howard.
go.
So don't talk about
Right.
that shit. But when your
Right.
son get off, because people got to realize it's about opportunity. These kids want to go to the
Absolutely.
NFL and make millions of dollars playing a damn game.
Right.
The best opportunities to do that, unfortunately, are not at the HBCUs
Right.
currently. So
Right.
if we support Jackson, how about we act like Deion's still there?
Like he's still there. Like it's still a program to contend with, right? I
Yes.
mean, think about it this way. Denzel Washington and his wife sent their son to Morehouse College. He played football there and became a trained bachelor's degree performing arts student. And he's an actor now. Like,
Yes.
come on. These historically Black colleges are the breeding ground for brilliance, excellence. It turned they say 80% of Black doctors went to an HBCU. Black
Wait,
doctors across the board in
whoa, whoa, whoa,
every
whoa, whoa,
profession.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yes,
80% of the currently in our
80%
country.
of Black doctors in this country went to an
God
HBCU, got their undergrad degree from an HBCU.
damn. That's
Damn.
damn near all of them, Sonia.
Yeah.
That's that's damn. So look, Black
Yeah.
parents, we can make whatever we want to make cool. We don't need Deion. We don't need the cachet of a big name person. If you think HBCU should be in a particular position, talk about them, wear the gear,
Yeah.
send your children there. Like that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing we can do. Because
Yeah.
Deion changed the game, Sonia, when he got big recruits. He got some
Absolutely.
4-star or 5-star recruits, 3-star
Yeah.
recruits, 3 or 4 of them. in the whole country gonna say what? Where he going?
Right.
Oh,
Jackson.
now we got to look
What?
at them. So
Absolutely.
shout out to the brother Deion. I respect
Yeah.
everything he's done. I'm seeing him move through the backlash he's received.
Yeah.
And he's a class act in talking about these issues. So I support that brother. Couple more things before we go. My sister Sonia brought something to my attention that I wasn't aware of. I'm not a big follower of baseball, but talk to me about
either.
Dusty Baker, Sonia, and what he's been able to do recently.
So he was just finally recognized. Dusty Baker, and not only should we have this conversation about Dusty Baker because he's a hometown, California kid, Sacramento roots, all of that kind of thing, but he started playing baseball like at an extremely young age, and he played with a player from the National Negro League. Like, okay, I like, me, the history buff is like, okay, so when we make connections to who we are today, especially in spaces that are not highly melanated, when I listen to my girl Karen Hunter on Sirius XM, she says melanemic. You can laugh later. People who are melanemic, right? And so I think that that's probably one of the reasons that baseball isn't one of those sports that one is highly played by players who are Black. That didn't always used to be because we had a National Negro League, and that Negro League fought to be in the NBA, what do you call it? National
MLB.
MLB.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So they fought hard. One of those players was Satchel Paige. And Satchel Paige still to this day has records as one of the number one pitchers. He will go down in history in this country as being a giant as a pitcher. And so Satchel Paige played with Dusty Baker. Like, imagine that you, this young kid, going into your dream career and able to make inroads as one of the first, Black players in the MLB. And you're playing with a great, like a Satchel Paige. So flip ahead, Dusty Baker, he's up there in age, but he was just recognized and got his ring. And he's been the manager of several teams, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Houston Astros. He's done the work. He's, like a Deion Sanders in a lot of ways, but he's not gotten the recognition that he deserves. And so I would have been remiss not to say, like, Dusty, we want to give you your flowers, like give you a standing ovation because you deserve it. And these are the things in spaces primarily that are melanemic, where we don't get credence and kudos. And let me just bring this a little bit closer to home. So one of my boys, a few years ago, my 21-year-old, when he was a senior in high school, the high school he attends is in Elk Grove, and the athletic director is also the coach of the baseball team. Baseball team is not very diverse. My son made it to all 4 years, made it to Masters, made it to state 3 times, state championships. The school's baseball team didn't make it to the state championships, much less win the league, right? So my son won the league. He then won the tournament after leagues. Then he turned around and won Masters, which qualifies you to make it to states. And I'm saying that because the athletic director at his school always picked a baseball player to be athlete of the year.
What sport did your son play?
He's a wrestler.
Ah, okay.
He's a wrestler, which also is a sport that is highly melanemic, right? And so I can remember him wrestling. I think it was his junior year of high school, and we were over at Elk Grove High School, and Elk Grove at that time was dominating in the district. And he wrestled this kid, and the grandfather in the stand after my son dominated and whooped that ass on that mat and got the win. The boy came over to his grandfather. His grandfather didn't say, Congratulations, you gave it your best shot. His grandfather berated him and said, you lost to one of them.
Yep.
And I just so happened to be sitting in front of the grandfather, and I turned around and I was like, one of what? A black kid? One of what? Right?
Yep.
And so flip ahead to when my son becomes a senior, and then we continue to experience these racist programming, right? We're not going to give the programs that are with the black kids. We're not going to give them the most money. Baseball's going to get the most money. And so I had to challenge the principal, the athletic director, and the district. I bet you this, at the end of that school year, when they nominated and the other little boy, quote unquote, won the popularity contest, whose name is up on that wall now? My son's. Because we had to fight for based on recognition. I'm talking about facts, right? We talking about data. We talking about where are the wins. Don't you now? Elk Grove has a rubric that you can't nominate an athlete of the year if they haven't met a certain criteria. You can't just say, "Oh, that's a nice kid and he's a good." No, it's not a popularity contest anymore. I wanted there to be some merit and some grit behind if you're giving out an award like that, because we typically know also that individual students who win things like athlete of the year, they typically get more athletic scholarships. You wasn't about to deny mine.
It's an accolade.
Right.
Yeah.
So
wow.
When you tie that all together and think about Dusty Baker and what he's done as a career, we don't want our folks to continue to get the crumbs. We don't want us to get the pats on the back and walk away. No, give me my ring, give me my trophy, give me my recognition, put my name on the wall. That's what we deserve, because we do the work. We represent our schools well. The organizations that we're associated with represent them well. Don't just erase us from the narrative.
Yeah, and we need to be cognizant of, because I think it's because I've heard good things about Dusty Baker. See, that's the thing.
Dusty's
everything you saying,
stand-up dude.
Like personal people. Hey, I ran into Dusty Baker the other day at a cooking event, and he was cool. That holds weight. Like to be a black man in all of these spaces where you've been denied and you're older in age, they have a completely different experience than us. So I salute all of our older brothers who've been able to go through that. And the Negro Leagues, just say a bit about the Negro Leagues, that was an important timepiece, because that was a black ecosystem. Like financially, the people who served the popcorn, the people who made the uniforms, a lot of people made money from the Negro Leagues, and white ice is always colder, and sometimes you don't know what you entering into. You don't know that it's a dilution process. You just think, okay, they paying us more money. The field is bigger. We ain't gotta mow the grounds ourselves. Excuse me. You looking at all that, but in reality, you guys had your own ecosystem. And even though now the MLB is a thing, right, where you said something earlier that was important. Black kids in the inner city, for the most part, do not play baseball like that, because I think access to the funness and commonality of the sport. Basketball, rims right there. All I need is a basketball. Let's get to it. Baseball, more interactive, more players needed. But in general, as the years go on, Sonia, I'm seeing less and less black players. I'm seeing more players who are melanated. They ass just ain't from here. See,
right?
So
they getting all the Dominicans, they getting the Haitians, they getting the Puerto Ricans who look just like us but speak Spanish, and they said, "Oh, come over here, you Cubano, yes, come over here and play for the MLB." This is very true. This is very true.
We can get your melanin without all the American shit we got to go through with the Negroes. Right? You know what I mean?
Right. But here's the thing also that we need to start paying attention to. I was, when my husband and I were early married, I was like, we got to have a baseball player in the mix. We have all these boys. I have birthed 6 boys into this world. And I used to say to myself, we need a baseball player. Football players have the shortest careers and make the least.
True.
Basketball players they make decent money, but they have a short career too, longer than football players. Baseball players have the longest careers. Like, you can be a baseball player for like 15 years and play and be like, move from team to team and still be an asset to that team.
Yep.
And they make the most money. And so we have to question, like, why are we sending our babies to these combines that look like slave auctions? Why are we sending our babies to these basketball courts where you got the shortest career? Yeah, and you don't make the most money. And black players, black professional athletes, again, I can't say it enough. We have not been trained to manage our money. We see money and dollar signs, and then we not only have to take care of ourselves, but we got to take care of our whole village that comes with us. And that means that we lose sight of and are not good, responsible managers of the money that we get. And that's
Mhm.
not all our fault, but part of it is our fault. And so we
Mhm.
have to take responsibility for that. So if you got a young athletic person at home and you are under the sound of our voices, groom your baby to be a baseball player because
Hey,
they have less injuries and longer
less
careers and they make
injuries.
more money.
Put that damn tennis racket in his hand. Come on now.
There you go.
You better do it. You better step outside of the box arena, daddy. Them he figured it out. Like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Ain't no black
Yeah.
folks over here. I got
King
it. Watch
William.
this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Definitely. So before
We
we
have
go,
to think outside the box for that.
we
Yeah.
have to think outside of the box and challenge the norms. I was watching a
Yeah.
TV show. Forgot the name of it on Apple Plus, I think. I'm so into so many different TV shows, but there was a black kid who was playing hockey. And
Mm,
because of the environment and it not being so melanated, he had a hard time. The players gave him a
yes.
hard time. And
Yes.
a lot of stuff was going on. And one of the guys asked him, hey, why are you playing hockey? Why are you not
Right.
playing basketball or football? Like, you black, basically, right? He said, look, I can't jump high. I'm not
Right.
that fast, but I got to get out this hood.
Yeah.
See, and that hit me like, oh, see, sometimes we use athletics as a way to get out of situations. Maybe
Absolutely.
our parents or people before us should have kind of helped more, but it's
Yeah.
interesting that once that melanin get in your circumference, we're gonna take it over. Give us a
We're
minute.
gonna take advantage. Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a student when I was a new teacher in San Francisco. He was a hockey player and he was like the sweetest kid. Was being recruited by they had these Canadian like little league teams, but in Canada you could be a minor and play in these like semi-professional leagues and stuff,
Mm,
and they would pay him to come and do these tournaments and stuff, and he did really, really well. But he was so depressed, and he would be like, Miss Lewis, I was Miss Williams back then. He'd be like, Miss Williams, um, I don't know that I can do this too much longer. And I know that I'm doing it to get out the hood, so to speak. I know that, this is something that my parents have. His father was like pushing him in the direction of playing hockey, but he was like, I don't know if I can do this long time. And this kid was the sweetest kid, but you can see every day when he would come back from playing over the weekend that his a little piece of his soul was being diminished every interaction that I had with him. And he was a senior when I encountered him. So I can't imagine, this is like what, 25 years ago. I can't imagine if he
mm.
even continued to pick up that hockey stick, because at that time when he was young was feeling the brunt of being depressed behind a sport that he really loved and was really good at. And that's the shame of it.
But the stress of your skin color. And it's funny
Yeah,
how young people, because we always stress together the importance of talking about racism and just
right.
systematic issues. You ain't got to go hard, just
No.
make them aware of what is and what ain't. You know what I mean? But when parents don't do that, I think kids are so innocent and they
Yeah.
find themselves in situations with kids that are just like them and they're just trying to
Mhm.
fit in. They're just trying to be nice like every other kid is. And to have the racial element thrown in your face, I don't
Yeah.
think people realize that, because I don't like to play the deprivation Olympics, like who's worse. But what we've been through is specific to us, and other
Absolutely.
races of people in this country don't have to feel the brunt of having so many different things a part of your story. Here in America,
Yeah.
you helped build the country. You had to be a slave in this country. You helped
Yeah.
your ancestors created all of this when it comes down to it. So we have
Yeah.
such a weight on our shoulder that sometimes these young people have to foster. So that's interesting that he loved the sport, but being in
Loved it.
an environment that's so anti you,
Yes.
he probably couldn't even articulate why he was so drained.
He just was like, I cannot continue to go on the ice and be hated because of my skin.
Come on
Like,
now.
they didn't know. He would go into places sometimes where There were no black spectators, there were no black coaches, there were no black anyone, and it was just him. And sometimes because we're talking about hood kids, his a family member couldn't travel with him. And
Mm,
so as much as coaches tried to protect and shield him from the negative backlash of who he was in those spaces, the unfortunate part about it is he was still isolated. and
mm.
and it was the grooming that a lot of um melanemic families do with their children by dropping those little breadcrumbs. Oh, don't play with that kid, you can't trust them. The Jaquans of the world, the
Yeah.
Maliks of the world,
Yeah, like you talked about last time. Yep.
right. It's the, I don't want you to go to into spaces and associate yourself. I want you to respect people, but I also don't want you to get super connected to and attached to people who don't look like you. And
Don't
so that's not the blatant I'm a racist and I learned this racist shit from home. That's the implicit, unintentional sometimes racist who show up and they pass the torch to the next
Yep.
generations of racists.
Yep. And it's subtle, but
It's
but
subtle.
I have to be honest, like it's funny. So you're like all of the black spaces I've been in, being a child, being with my aunts, my mom, my grandma, in a home, I've never had a hate whitey conversation.
Yeah,
That was
no,
rare that it was
no,
awareness. It was
right.
awareness and a reaction to something that has happened. So we need to
Yeah,
realize in our country, we have a lot of people, even this is unfortunate, but before we get out of here, people who aren't white, who
yeah,
come over to this country and take on the same ideology as a white supremacist, they look at
right,
me as the enemy. I'm the
right.
enemy. I'm a thug. I'm all of these different things, but you love me at the same time. It's
Yeah.
weird, you guys.
The machine has conditioned the world to believe certain things about
Yes,
Black Americans,
yes,
and not just Black Americans, because and not just other folks around the globe see us that way. Other African diasporic people around the globe believe that Black Americans specifically are the enemy. So you used to, maybe not so much now, people who were from African, countries, or people who were from the Caribbean, who are very particular about saying, but I wasn't born in America and I'm not a Black American. I'm Haitian or I'm
here we go.
Ghanaian, right? So there is this machine when it comes to how we condition people to trust and create the hierarchy system. Because if we don't believe in that house, so as a Black diasporic people, the group of folks who are melanin across this globe, if we came together, and I'm so grateful that I'm seeing more and more of that collective bonding happening. Like there are African countries that are like, we want our ancestors who were stolen and
Yes,
taken to America to come back home. Like
yes,
this is it's a thing now, right? And so you have a lot of Black Americans who are going back to the motherland. That wasn't the case, a decade or two ago, right? And so the machine, we have to continue to question the machine. And the more and more we have conversations like this on platforms like this, on outlets that are, paid and got the dollars to share the narrative, shape the narrative to what the Black lived experience is, I think that people will add credence to believing what the Black lived experience is. I can only hope that.
we have to remain hopeful, but it's a big, like everybody has a part to play in this. And
Yes,
I speak to people all the time who, black folks who come at me about how I speak on my platform, about how I talk about racism, and
right.
everybody confuses it with like a hate speech type of thing, like I'm hating someone, but it's love. See,
It's
it's love
love.
for my people. When you
Yeah,
unapologetically speak about love, that's why
yeah.
Sonia, what you did at that student at that meeting, we can all talk amongst each other some
Right,
revolutionary shit and kick it
right.
with each other and talk up. When you're in front of them other people, though,
Yeah,
when you're in front of everybody, you have to be
yeah,
just as unapologetic. So this is the Melanated Convo podcast. This is
yeah,
your brother Harrison, Sonia Williams Lewis.
yeah.
Happy to be back with you, sister. So thank you again
Absolutely.
for tuning in for another week. Sonia,
Yeah.
real quick, talk about your social media real quick. Tell everybody where they can reach you if they want to look at,
Absolutely. We
everything you
try to
do.
make it easy for folks. So my website is Ascribe Success. That's ASCRIBE success.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Ascribe Success. So it's real easy. Everything is very, in line. We are always, it's that month of giving when people want to make that last, dip of, can I get a tax break before the year is up because I didn't give enough this year? We do a teach-in every summer, every Black History Month. We will do a teach-in for Kwanzaa later this month, and so we raise funds for that. We on our Ascribe page. There's a donation link for our teach-ins, but talking about all things Black, right? And it's not when I always have to, break down this myth that just because we're having a conversation about all things Black doesn't mean that the people having the conversation have to be Black, right? Because all people can benefit from a conversation about learning, like a Dusty Baker who played with Satchel Paige, right? We can learn about these things. We can learn from each other. And so even though the teach-in centers the Black lived experience, it is not an experience that is exclusive to those who are Black. So
Yes,
bring your kids to the teach-in. It's a fabulous place.
Definitely. Our history is American history. So,
American history.
everybody can appreciate it. So this is your brother Harrison, man, Melanated Convo Podcast. Reach me at melanatedconvo.com for all the information about the show. My Instagram is melanatedconvo100. Really, really excited to continue to bring you guys this kind of information. I'm passionate about what we're doing, man. So my sister Sonia, I'm your brother Harrison. It's the Melanated Convo Podcast. We will see you guys next Thursday. We out.